Welcome to The Odd Show, where the G is silent and represents a God who is sometimes difficult to see in the world that we live in. Join the discussion as we try to figure out how to live as Christians in that place of tension created by a world that doesn't quite get us and a church that often reacts rather than acting out of compassion. Now, here's your hosts, Bruce Pagano and Thomas Hogan. So, welcome back to The Odd Show.
The G is silent.
The G is silent. We are recording live again. We have 3 or 4 episodes that we're going to do.
Recording live.
We're actually live.
For 0 audience
for
members.
0 viewers.
Recording live for selfish purposes.
Yeah, it's probably one of the better platforms that we've used, which is funny because it's Google Hangouts.
Basically.
Yeah. Anyway, YouTube. They're all connected. YouTube, Google Hangouts. Anyway, so I guess we'll just get right into it.
Yeah, let's just do it. I mean, that's
I have nothing to joke about. We just joked about everything.
So if you grew up Christian, we're sorry.
Oh, we can start out. We can joke about that.
Let's start out. If you grew up as a Christian in the 80s or 90s, especially in the 90s, we're probably going to say some negative things. We're going to say some weird things. We're going to say some derogatory things. And also, if you didn't grow up Christian in the 80s or 90s, I'm also sorry.
Right.
Because you missed out on some of the fun, some of the
DC talk,
some of the stuff that's kind of defining of when you meet another Christian your
generation.
Age. Yeah, in their mid 30s to mid 40s, and you meet another Christian in that time, in that age group. It's very distinctive of kind of what we all had similar experiences. So.
Except it's funny though, because like you'll mention bands, Christian bands, or and I was Christian, and I don't know that. Like I was like, no, I didn't DC talk.
I would say I was saturated.
Right.
I would say you probably weren't. I mean, we'll get into it when we talk about it, but you weren't saturated. I was saturated in the culture.
Right. And we were not.
The subculture that is the subculture that is Christianity.
Yeah. So and with that said, we're sorry.
That's how we should start off all our shows.
Right. We're sorry
about
this. If you have not left the church, you may want to after this.
Right. If you've left,
out.
If you left the church, you might be like, well, maybe it's time to come back.
Maybe these guys are wrong, and
maybe we have to go fix it. Let us go back and fix it.
So
Back to the Future.
So you want to? I think
do a little bit of an intro. What do you want to do?
You want to tell stories?
Yeah, let's tell stories.
You want to tell your story first? Yours is probably a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah.
Than mine.
Yeah, I just came to Christ and just did the stuff.
Yes.
Right.
You read a lot.
Yeah. So I've blogged about it. I've talked about it in several different formats.
Are you going to talk about what'd you do before you were a Christian?
Before I was a Christian?
Nothing.
Well, nothing. I went to when I was a really little kid, they made me go to church.
Okay.
Because I had family members that were church people.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I was like, I think around 6 or 7, my parents were like, "Do you want to go?" And I'm like, "Nope." And they're like, "Okay." And that was the end. That was the end of that.
Phenomenal parenting to let your 7-year-old decide
determine their spiritual destiny.
Not that I'm saying anything about your parents, but I mean, I don't let my kids pick what they wear. I
actually remember the only church we went to was the Salvation Army, which is very super low key. And the bus would come and pick us up. Mm-hmm. And my parents would be like, "Oh, I can get rid of you for half the day."
Oh, yeah.
So they would let us go. But then it came one Sunday and they asked, like, "Do you want to go?" And I remember like, "No, not really." And that was it. I just didn't
go back.
I didn't go. I was like, whatever.
Right.
I didn't have to go. Unless I was at my cousin's house or my aunt and uncle's house where they were church people.
You're like, you're going to go.
Or pastors.
You're 6. You don't get to
you don't make decisions for yourself. Right. But as far as I could make decisions for myself, I did not go to church between the ages of 7 to 13.
Okay.
Maybe 14. And then a good friend of mine who was a heathen, maybe still is, I don't know, was a good friend of mine, Troy Walker, who was a heathen at the time. Not so much these days. But he invited me and he was like, let's go to this church. And I'm like, well, if you're going to church, there must be something crazy happening there. and there was. They had foosball and pool and like pizza parties and cute girls and not church stuff, like
Right.
not what I consider church stuff. So I went and I loved it. It was interesting to me. And then they preached salvation, and I didn't quite get it, but I liked the atmosphere, so I kind of stuck around from the age of 13 until now, next week when I'm leaving. No, I got saved. I got saved that summer over the course of that summer under that teaching under that Wednesday night Bible study slash goof around and hang out with your friends teaching. I got saved 6 or 7 times at least, and because I still didn't quite get what they were talking about. And then I grew up in Christian stuff from that point on. I didn't quite get it for a couple of years because I was a 13, 14-year-old.
Right.
But around somewhere between the ages of 15 and 16, it kind of clicked. And a lot of that had to do with C.S. Lewis. I read Mere Christianity, and that really
Aquinas.
Aquinas, maybe
Aquinas?
Aquinas probably a little later, but I don't know if
who
at
else were you reading?
16. I was reading.
You were reading some high end stuff.
Yeah, I was reading C.S. Lewis. I did read a little bit of Aquinas apologetics about the beginning of Summa Theologica.
Okay.
So, but not like I didn't get into it until later,
Gotcha.
Augustine and all that stuff. But Saint Louis, Saint Francis of Assisi. Just this idea, these Christian principle things, right? And then I sat under great pastors and leaders, and I liked it. I liked Christian stuff. I liked Christian music. Man, I loved Christian music. The only music I was into before that was like Dr. Dre and Guns N' Roses, like very rock lifestyle type of stuff, like stuff that. Anyway, I was into that kind of thing, and then but after I became a Christian, I started listening to DC Talk and Newsboys, and then I was
no more Cold November Rain. Huh?
No more Cold November Rain. That's just still one of my favorite songs of all time. I love that song. Yeah. But I got into this world. I was kind of a nerd already, and then I got into this world where it didn't matter that I was a nerd because I liked Jesus and I liked the Bible, and it didn't. Being a nerd up until that point was this really negative experience, and not like today at all. Like now, everyone's a nerd. Yeah. But when I was a kid, there were like 6 of us, and we weren't even friends because we were like, if they catch us both in the same area, it's gonna be a million times worse. Get beat up. Right. So I was just this super nerd, and but then when it came to Christianity, being a nerd didn't matter because it mattered about how passionate you were about the Bible. It mattered how much you knew about who God is and what He wants. Like that stuff was the central focus, not like your popularity. Although it did play a role in like your interactions and stuff, but it wasn't a game of popularity. It was literally, I need to find God, and this is the easiest, best way to do it. Or not even easiest. This is the best way to do it as far as my experience goes or my understanding goes. So I just fell in love with it. You know, the supertones, man, I loved the supertones so much. I love ska so much. Yeah. I love
Christian metal never dies.
Yeah. I loved the concerts. I loved I say I loved the girls. I mean, I was very wary. I don't know, weary. I was both.
Weary.
I was both. I was both. I was
very wary
and wary.
I was worried by
the Christian girls. Freaked me out a little because I couldn't tell exactly what they were doing. That had a lot to do with insecurity as a young person, like a youngest teenager. I was like, I was intrigued.
Are they going to make me stumble?
I know. I was super spiritual. I would say I was not very good Christian, but I was super spiritual.
I'm just trying to care for her heart, man.
I just really want to care for her heart. Yeah. You know, I really want to be careful with her heart and my heart.
I want to treat her like a sister.
I want to guard. Yeah, I want to guard my heart, like the Proverbs say. In Proverbs 4, I want to guard my heart.
And guard my heart and care for her heart.
And care for her. So I grew up in this Christian world, right? And it really became a subculture. It became this. It wasn't a secret group. Everybody knew who we were. I mean, most people knew who we were, but it was this. It was just this different world. It wasn't, you know, you go into this bubble where you know what's expected of you, and you know what you expect of other people, and there's like kind of this unspoken agreement about how the flow of things go, and I liked that. I liked it a lot until I didn't.
Right.
I thought it was great until it wasn't.
Right.
And I would say when I say I liked it and I loved it and I was a part of it, I was all in. I was, I made fun of the Bible study as a Christian. I made fun of the Bible study because it wasn't Christian enough. The guys who
Right.
would get together at school before school and pray, and I was like, oh, they're trying to make a show of it. That's not real. I was like hardcore.
Right.
And then I got involved with that group. I started hanging out with some of those leaders and those people. And my best friend, who kind of helped me come to know Christ and discipleship, James, shout out to James. He became president of that Bible study, like our sophomore year, and then I became president our senior year. Like I was in.
Yeah.
I was in. I was just in. I was so Christian. Other Christians were like, "Man, I think maybe you're too far.
You've gone too far.
You're too
You've
Christian
gone
at this
too
point.
far.
You're too Christian at this point."
You
And
were
then
like, I was a Jew's Jew. No, I was a Christian's Christian.
I was a Christian. I was like,
I was a Hebrew among Hebrews.
I was like the Jesus of Christians,
right? Or Jesus is the Jesus of Christians.
I was too much, you know.
Right.
I was just, and I remember I just talked about this in my class, in my evangelism class. We're talking about informational evangelism and incarnational evangelism, which we're not going to talk about today because those are big words that aren't necessary to go into. But in that discussion, I talked about how when I was in high school, I would carry my tattered NIV, this tattered like NIV purple Bible,
showing that you
everywhere. No, I read it.
Yeah.
It was part of it was like I'm not ashamed to show people. That was before Lecrae.
Right. You were the original.
Nobody was telling us, like, but I was the original 116. Just to point that out. No, it wasn't really a show.
Right.
Like literally, if I wasn't doing anything, if we were in a class and they were like not doing anything, I'd be reading my Bible. If I went to in my school, in my high school, gym time, PE was mostly weightlifting and all those classes were mostly for sports people.
Right.
So we would go, and then the sports guys would get all the coach or the person who's teaching the class. They would get the attention, and then the rest of us would be like goofing around.
Right.
And I would sit on the bleachers while everyone else is running or playing volleyball or doing whatever, and I would like read my Bible. And even when I started dating, like I took my Bible on dates. Yeah, poor girl, man.
Probably why you didn't understand Christian girls.
That poor girl. Like
that poor girl. When I started dating,
I look back.
That poor girl.
I look back.
Not girls.
Yeah, that poor.
When I dated that one girl,
I was interested in other girls.
No,
I was suspect.
When I started dating,
I thought
there was one girl.
I thought they were all the devil in disguise. I was like, "You're the devil in disguise, aren't you?" And I'm not gonna fall for your wiles.
That doesn't have anything to do with the fact that misogyny exists inside the church. Like,
I don't.
Is that a different conversation?
I think if I would have ever
Can we have an episode about hashtag
misogyny?
Things women.
Yeah, things
only
women,
Christian
only
women.
Christian women here. Yeah, that was awesome. That's been a really interesting discussion. We could talk about that. I remember feeling so bad later.
Right.
Like at the time, it made so much sense to me. I'm like, girls are here to throw you off of your
game
spiritual development
with Jesus,
of your discipleship.
Women
game. Are meant to be like women are a foil for your advancement in the faith.
So they are the stumbling block that.
I mean, honestly, let's be honest.
No.
You're full of lust at that. It doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl. You're full of lust at the and if you deny it, if you don't actively do anything about it, it just becomes more and more of a problem in your brain, and it affects the way you think and act. And so I would say I had this kind of picture in my head of what relationships should look like, and I didn't see any of them healthy. I didn't see any of them working out. And so when I did start dating, when I was 17-ish, I started dating, and it was just this, because I was part of this Christian world, this Christian bubble, it was like this impossible to live up to thing that was happening. And it was just, and it ended up blowing up in my face. It was really, it did not work out too well. I mean, like I would say a lot, not all, but a lot of Christian relationships, especially in that time frame of your life, it was very immature on my part. Lots of spiritual immaturity on my part.
I'm surprised it didn't work out.
That's fair.
Huh.
That's fair. Anyway, so I lived in this Christian world, and I loved it so much, and it was great, and it was preparing me for ministry, and it was developing my faith, and it was putting me in positions of leadership or positions of influence in church world, right? And that was it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Cool.
It was weird, but it was great.
Yeah.
Looking back now, I'm like, what in the world? I would never want that for my kids, and I have several. I have many children,
That's
and
not 4,
I want them to love God.
5,
I want them
several.
I want them to love God passionately, and I want them to follow Him. But I don't want them to be beholden to a bubble
Not real.
that's not real.
Right.
Like I just trying to be honest. It was great, and I was okay. I In the end, I got a lot out of it.
Right.
But I look around the landscape of people I grew up with that were also in church, and they did not.
A lot of them.
A lot of them have
I think you
abandoned.
said before.
Yeah, they've abandoned the faith. The ones that felt called to ministry, they've abandoned the ministry, and the ones that felt like, man, I just love Jesus so much, and that's all I want. You look at their lives now, in any capacity. You have a meaningful conversation with them, and they'll be the first to tell you, man, I miss loving God, and I miss being close. And really, they weren't really. I wouldn't say that they didn't love God, but I would say that they weren't close.
Right.
They were not as close as they thought they were. Um, they were close to the culture. They were
Right.
close to the bubble that we had created. This kind of subculture of Christianity in the mainstream culture, or rebellion against the mainstream culture. They were close to that. But when it comes to the divine, when it comes to the Holy Spirit and the power of God and the goodness of God, they were adjacent to it, not close to it.
So
your story now,
my story,
different.
a lot different. We grew up. We're Italian, so we grew up Roman Catholic, like every good Italian would.
In New Jersey and or New York,
California.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that they were there.
No, they are, because like in the 50s.
They split. They left.
They all moved down there
after the whole thing. They were like, let's go over.
Yeah, there was probably a thing that happened, but I mean, Southern California was the place to be, and especially like Italians were moving out west, Vegas, and Hollywood, and then the Jews came and took over everything. I'm just kidding.
This is live. We can't edit this. Man.
No, I mean they run Vegas and Hollywood.
I've seen Casino.
Yeah, and Godfather too.
Sure.
Anyway, but no, they were moving out there. My family moved out there in the 50s and the late 50s or something like that, 60s, and so I grew up Roman Catholic, except that I don't know if my dad had a problem with it or he was just kind of indifferent to it. But when the time came for us to go to our confirmation classes, like catechism and all that, he was just like, nope, not my kids. And we didn't go. So mostly we went to mass when my grandma drug us to church to go to mass or to light a candle or to say a prayer.
We should bring lighting candles back.
Yeah, why not? Those ones with Jesus on them.
Oh, those are creepy. I don't know. It's kind of creep me out.
If you're gonna go all the way.
I've never seen Jesus on them. I always see like somebody else, some guy
or some saint. But I mean, like Jesus on the crucifix. That's the thing.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Or Jesus with that light, the halo,
the light of the candle that I.
No, you know.
Oh, okay.
You've seen those pictures? Where it's like a. Anyway, I don't know if it's their aura or whatever, but that sounds new age.
I saw his aura, man.
So that was pretty much my young childhood. But as we got older and moved away from California, we moved to Alaska. My mom's family lives in Alaska, so we moved to Alaska, and we just didn't go. Like we just probably from 8 to 9-ish to 12. I don't ever remember stepping in a church.
Whoa.
After that, like during that time, 3 or 4 years, not even for Christmas and Easter, which makes you a really bad Catholic.
Yeah, that's like you've totally given up.
Yeah, at least you go during Christmas and Easter if you're a Catholic. So a violent crime happened. My dad was working at this place where where his boss, great lady, Jane, was Christian, is Christian. I think she's still in contact with my parents occasionally, but my dad was working, and this violent crime happened to me. I was 12 years old, almost 12, and my dad knew enough to contact her and was like, "Hey, can you come pray with us?" And she came and prayed with us, and invited us to go to her church, and we went. And I don't remember exactly how, there's a youth, like we had a youth group, but I don't remember exactly how it happened. I think we were all sitting in, but like we're all sitting in her church, and we all pretty much got saved at the same time. Like my parents gave their life to Jesus about the same time that me and at least one or two of my sisters did. Um, so we're all kind of all of a sudden this Christian family. Like we're all saved all at the same time, all the same level of maturity in Christ. like,
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the pre-show. Like that is I would say it's a unique thing. I'm sure it happens to a lot of people,
right,
but like that is not something that the church teaches. Like, how do you walk this out?
right. So, I really did be, I really was introduced to church as a Sunday, a once a week thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and discipleship really wasn't a thing. Like we didn't have anybody. My parents didn't have anybody leading them deeper into. Like if you didn't go to Sunday school or Wednesday service or Wednesday Bible study,
Mm-hmm.
there were no small groups. People weren't meeting
Yeah,
in
this was long
houses.
before small group revolution. Yeah.
So if you didn't go to those things, that was your opportunity to be discipled, and you just weren't. And my dad worked long
Even though
hours, and
I would say that's the opposite of what the Bible says to do.
right, exactly. But I mean, like it just like you just had no exposure to
Right.
even the concept of.
Discipleship.
And I think I mentioned it before. I really thought this disciple was really relegated to those like
The 12
those
guys
12,
that followed
those
Jesus
12,
around. And one of them screwed up.
yeah. So we went to church. We went to multiple churches over the years. From 12 to 18, um, well, 12 to 16 ish, probably. Um, there was a good solid 4 years there. We went almost every Sunday, and if we didn't go, or I remember one time, my parents forgot to sign their tithe check, and a staff member from the church knocked on our door on like Monday. It might have been Sunday
And
afternoon,
offered to disciple you.
and asked us to sign the check.
of,
Um,
of course he did.
and we did not go back.
He did not. He did not offer to
I
disciple
don't remember
you.
if my dad signed
Because
the
that would
check.
be a good opportunity. I think a good segue into. I don't think you've been taught well
Right.
how to sign checks or follow Jesus. Let me help you.
Right. Yeah. No, it was like, hey, we need you to sign this if we're going to cash it. And I don't remember if my dad signed it. He might have, but I feel like I'll have to ask him, but I feel like he was like, no, and then took the check back and shut the door. I feel like that's what happened.
I hope that's the story.
Yeah,
I really hope that's the story.
At least in my head. Maybe I won't ask him, and I'll just believe that that's what happened.
Much better way for that to end. For me.
So I remember things like, we had the youth thing, like we had a half pipe. Like we had a big room with a big half pipe.
We had some cool stuff. We did not have
like a legitimate pipe.
We had a pool table.
We would sit. I remember sitting at the top of the half pipe, legs dangling over the edge, listening to the sermon the youth pastor preached.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like we just
more of that.
Did that. So we had a half pipe, and I remember like I was in
more of that.
The church that we were in, like this is how confused about. So I got saved probably every week. Every time there was an altar call, I was down front crying like I messed up. Like it was especially being Catholic.
Correct us if we're wrong. And if you're watching the show later, is that not how you get saved over and over again?
Especially for me coming out of. Not really coming out of Catholicism, but seeing it
exposed
for
to,
8 or 9 years. I really did think that maybe it was my confession, like my weekly confession. Like, I can come up here every week.
I personally, I'm all for that. I mean, on an honest level, I'm all for that. I think you should, if they open the altars for you to put yourself before God, do it.
Right.
I'm all for it.
Except that I was accepting Jesus every week. And I was confused about how that worked.
I mean, because the priest usually just gives you.
Right. But I never got to. I didn't go to class, so I couldn't do that.
Oh, Jeez.
Yeah.
So you're just missing out. Like
Yeah.
your
All over.
Catholic soul was longing for
Yeah,
that
maybe.
expression.
Maybe I'll go back just so I can do it. Fill that part of my soul. So I remember one time that they were speaking tongues.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
there were kids,
There are kids speaking in tongues?
and I'm like 14, and I'm like, oh, if I want to be a good Christian, I probably
I
somehow
probably should speak gibberish.
somehow I correlated with because I understand, like, they explained what speaking in tongues was as far as I could understand it, and somehow I correlated good Christianity. Like, if I want to be a good follower of Jesus, I probably should have that gift. So I faked
Right. I don't want to interrupt your great story. Good thing or bad thing?
to fake it.
Yeah.
So long, such a bad thing. Such a bad
Such,
thing.
hey guys,
Like,
hey, to my Pentecostal friends out there, who I grew up Pentecostal, and I can understand and appreciate where you're at. Don't do that.
also,
Don't do that.
thumbs up.
Stop doing
Also, if the spirit has not slain you, don't let them push you down.
that. Yep. Stand in defiance, my friend.
But it was such a bad thing for such a long
Oh,
time. I
man.
really thought at one point, and I'm talking like into my 30s, probably.
Wow.
Like, I really thought that I had not received that gift because I faked it.
Yeah, man, it's so bad.
Like,
We gotta do better, guys.
I thought that
Hey, I believe in the gifts. I'm not a cessationist in any sense of the word, and I don't use theological terms too much. Don't do that, man.
Right.
So many negative things come out of that.
So
Do what you're prompted to do by the Holy Spirit. If you're not, move on. Do something else.
that was my preteen, and then probably about 16, we moved back to California. I ended up living with my grandma, and we didn't go anymore. Like, my aunt was sick. My grandma, wasn't dealing with that well. My grandpa had died about 6 years before that. My grandma just kind of let things go. So we didn't go. We didn't go to church. We didn't go to mass. They were not Christian, so we definitely weren't going to a Christian church. If we were, I didn't know anybody that
Protestant.
was.
They weren't Protestant.
They weren't
Christian,
Protestant.
yeah.
Sorry, Catholics. I know you're Christian. You're the original Christians.
They OG OCs.
And then we moved back right before I graduated, probably the year before I graduated high school. We moved back to Alaska with my parents, and kind of probably were in church and at church, but I was old enough that I was like, I don't care. Like, I want to be a good Christian in that I like God. I like Jesus and the idea of it, and I believe this stuff, but not so far as it impacts the way that I live my life.
Right. Now don't go too far.
Right. So
where I went too far, you were like, I'm not going to go too far.
Right. Which meant that I didn't really go anywhere.
Fair enough.
So, and that lasted until I was 32. Like, from about 18 to 32, especially after I had kids, we would go to church, and I mentioned that I'm divorced. My ex-wife and I would fight constantly about the importance. So, I was like, no, they need to be we need to be in church for them. And she was like, well, I hate going there. Like, I just don't like going there. And for whatever reasons, those are her own. But even during that time, I realized, there's something important here that I want my kids to get.
Right.
And it may just be morally a good thing to go. And we even met in 2006 or 7. Man, a decade.
Yeah.
But we even met while we were me and my ex-wife were in the middle of that argument where we had chosen to go to church, and we met there, part of a small group.
We didn't know that they were in that argument. We just wanted to hang out with other Christians that weren't ridiculous. And so we were like, these Christians don't seem ridiculous.
And that was us, because
let's hang out with them.
Because we weren't Christians.
Well, they gave off the appearance of Christians without the ridiculousness.
Yeah. So, and I was trying to be I had felt God. I would say that I was actively rejecting God's call to him. And that's probably a whole nother story. But I had felt God calling me to himself, and and used whatever excuses I could um, rebut that call. Like I don't want.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's it, and then I had a divorce, and God was just like, I can fix your heart, and things changed, and
Good
then
deal. So for me, when I hear your story, I think, man, there was an opportunity there for the church to really help your family and invest the resources of the body into developing you in your faith walk, in your personal life, in your family relationships, all that stuff. Because I know the end story of what
Right,
goes on with your family and stuff. So I just feel like, man, what an opportunity the church has to. If you're going to be exposed to all these people, we have this great, amazing avenue to invest in relationships and people in a way that brings their faith into like perspective and practical application and all that stuff.
right,
And what a waste that we don't, through discipleship, that we don't take those opportunities.
right,
You're going to show up for an hour and a half, 2 hours every week for most of your young life. Like if you're a teenager and you're going to church because your parents want you there, um, what an awesome time to say, okay, instead of a sermon 99% of the time, what's going on with you? How's your
right,
heart? What where's your relationships at? Where your what's your purpose? And getting into those things. And I feel like I had some of that mostly through friendships, not really through the church. Didn't really do it per se, but people in the church did it.
right.
So that's weird. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not weird. It's sad.
and not uncommon.
No, no, not uncommon at all.
So now we're at this place where, and this is kind of where, so like, after, like, and I think I was telling someone this the other day. Um, the reason that I was able to stay after I came back to church, the reason I was able to stay was because of the group of people that I got to
Right.
be around. Because I was convinced that this doesn't fix anything. The church, the body of Christ, um, that Jesus really isn't concerned with fixing things in your life. I just gotten to this point where I was like, you want from me to do these things, to follow these rules, but like you're not concerned with giving me anything. Um, and when I realized that that was untrue,
Right.
that that Jesus legitimately didn't want anything from me except a reciprocation of love, um, and he wanted to give me everything and fix not my circumstances but my heart, and fix my brokenness. When I realized that, that made me stay, and that happened through the group of people, you and
Right.
Angie
Right.
and Curtis and Heather and the shift, and um, even spending time with Jeff, my pastor and friend. I'd never had anybody pour themselves into me that way, um, with a legitimate concern and love.
Hmm.
Um, and so I stayed, and we just had an episode where we talked about building disciples and building leader versus building leaders, and we talked a little bit about it. But it was that community that drew me to this place and was this microcosm of what God started kind of revealing what bigger church could look like. And now I want to leave.
Okay. For me, for me, the
Not
thing that
Christianity.
the
I don't
thing
want.
that gets me up to leaving is, so I had a similar experience early on. I went to this youth group, open Bible youth group on Wednesday nights, and then I started going because of friends I had in high school that went to a church called Westside Assembly of God. So I started going because their youth group was on Tuesday nights. So I started going to their youth group on Tuesdays and my youth group on Wednesdays. And before I had a
Oh, you were
job,
way in.
before
No, I mean,
before I
like you
had a
weren't
job,
joking.
yeah, before I had a job and I wasn't tithing and that wasn't a concern. I was like, this is awesome. then I had a job, and I was like, I don't know what to do.
Oh yeah.
I've been taught in a way that I can't tithe to both of you because I'll
Right.
have no money, but I can't tithe to one of you because I'll be robbing God. It's very, very complicated. But it was like
It's so much less complicated.
my
than that.
$140 check from Taco Bell. I don't know what to do with
$28.
it. I know. That seems like a lot of money whenever you're
No, yeah, you're right.
16 or 17. Anyway, I went to these two youth groups, and what I experienced was community outside of church because I had this youth group of people that I loved and cared about. Not everybody there, but some of the people there. And then I also had this other youth group that I loved and cared about, and not everybody there, but most of the people there. And we just kind of gathered together outside of the church world to be in each other's lives.
Right.
So after church on Tuesday, we would all hang out at Taco Bell for like hours until Taco Bell closed. And that was like what we did.
I worked at Taco Bell, not that one, but I worked at Taco Bell and hated when kids came.
Oh,
and did that.
we were the worst.
Yeah.
We were so bad. Like I ended up working at that Taco Bell later, and it was
I
hilarious.
realized.
Yeah, we were the worst.
That guy hated me.
Oh, these kids are the worst. But anyway, I experienced community. I experienced fellowship, real Christian interaction outside of the walls of the church, outside of the confines of what the church was promoting. Um, and that changed me. That's the reason I stay, or
Right.
I stayed for so long. Like I believed that you could capture that if you did it, if you put the program in there,
Right.
if you built the system in just a specific way, that you could get to that.
Right.
And still to this day, when I preach, when I teach, when I go out and promote like versions of gospel centered community or whatever, in my head, I'm thinking about those people. I'm thinking about Chad and Dana and Tim and Angie and Jeremy and James and Treja and Deborah and Angela and Vana. I'm thinking about these people
And
that
that's
were
funny
so
that you can name all those people. Like I can't name anybody I was in youth with.
yeah,
I can't name the youth pastor.
because I loved.
Right.
It's not I love those people, but it's not even that I loved those people. It's that those people were what Christianity was to me.
Right.
And they were flawed, and they had all.
Right.
I mean, they're still flawed, but they were flawed in 1998.
Right.
They were really flawed, and I loved that. I loved it, and they were honest about it. They're like, "Yeah,
Right.
I struggle with taking ecstasy sometimes with my girlfriend because it's so much fun." I'm like, "Oh, awesome! You're really bad at this thing, huh?
Yeah.
You don't quite get how we do this, do you?" But I loved that. And every church I was a part of, because I was in the military. I joined the military
Right.
soon after that when I was 19, and I kind of just bounced from church to church, not because we weren't church shopping. We would get thrown into a place where we were only there for 3 or 4 years,
Right.
and so my investment in that church was
You're
how do I get
after the military?
in the
Or-
military?
Oh,
So
I mean, like
yeah,
after
but
you
I was still
joined?
young. I was 19 years
Right.
old, so I kind of we got thrown in this place where I was always looking for that. How do I make that
Right.
happen? How do I make community? Or I didn't even know what to call it back then. There was no we didn't write books about it. I mean, I'm sure somebody did, but I didn't read them.
Right.
Um,
There's two.
community,
Right.
community of Christ, or
Right.
community. Anyway, I looked for that. I wanted that, and so I would gear myself up to make that happen because that's what got me.
Right.
That's what made me want to be a part of this thing called Christianity. It wasn't necessarily the building and the programs and the pastor and the sermons, although I love a good sermon, or the worship. It was these people are what we do this for, and I want to be a part of that kind of people.
Right.
And I loved that until I didn't.
Right.
Until it didn't work.
And-
Until it wasn't what I thought it was.
Right. And so that leads to this. And, I find it interesting that you were like, we went to Taco Bell and we hung out. And the thing that was most notable with the shift was Culver's.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
went to Culver's and we hung out.
Yeah. Everybody knows Culver's is community.
Right. Hashtag. So we're leaving. We're leaving the church. We're in process. You're probably further along in process than I am, in that you don't identify with, I'm going to serve at this church.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind serving at a church.
Right.
I'm not against it. We talked about it a couple weeks ago.
And I got suckered.
And you got suckered into it. No,
No,
I feel
I
like
didn't get suckered into it.
yeah, I feel like the call of God to build community and cultivate community in relationship to what God's doing in a neighborhood or in a specific location, that call is the call for me.
Right.
And so there are churches that do that and do it well. And
Right.
I don't even just want to partner with them. I want to accentuate, I want to highlight and point out, man, look at how well that church is doing it. What are you doing? How can I enable that more? And churches that aren't doing it well, I don't want to call them out, but I want to help them get to a place where they're
Right.
healthy. So I'm not anti church world.
Right.
I think the silliness has got to stop eventually.
Right.
But
It's gone too far. You've
you've
gone too far.
Like they should have told me back then.
Um,
But I do feel what I tell people right now that kind of go through the struggle of I've been doing this for 10 years or 15 years or 8 years or whatever, and I don't know why I'm doing it. I just I do it because I do it, and I don't know what is here for me. And I know it sounds harsh and it's gonna sound crazy, and I hope I get some feedback. I tell people to leave all the time.
right.
I'm like, the best thing you can do at this point right now is leave. And it's not leaving God or leaving the faith. It's finding a world outside of church because that's where the world is.
Right.
The world the world is not Sunday morning, the world stops existing for a couple of hours and you get to be in heaven. You get to
Right.
be in what is heavenly. And you don't get that. You need to know where the world is and you need to know where brokenness and destruction and pain and anguish exist, and they exist in churches too, but you need to know that that's the common experience of man outside of this world, and you need to find other Christians that are willing to walk that way with you.
Right.
And what you won't find in a lot of churches are people that will walk into the world, walk into darkness, and still find hope and be able to grow. Like
Right.
it's almost like I'm shielding you from that by you being a part of this bubble. I'm going to shield you from the brokenness and the weight of the lost and the hurting outside of these four walls. Stay in here where it's safe. And no, don't leave. And leave so that you can become better.
Right.
Don't leave because this isn't good enough. Leave so that you yourself as an individual can come better. And I know when I say that to some people, they think I'm being negative about the church. It's not about the church, it's about that person. I think that that person deserves to see that their faith isn't dependent on
And when you
this.
say it's not negative about the church, you're saying it's not negative about the building that we go
Yeah,
to on
it's not
Sunday.
negative about the structures and
Right.
programs and Sunday schools and bus ministries.
Because in
and
leaving that, you get to be with the church.
right. And I think that I I've seen people leave and come back, so
Right.
I'm okay with that.
Right.
And I feel like the longer you stay there when you don't know why you're there, I would argue that about anything. The longer you take communion and it doesn't mean anything, the worse off you are.
Right.
The longer you pray and you don't get why you're praying because there are these words that you know already, then the more it hurts you and not helps you. I know there's some subconscious people want to say, well, just do it and you'll even if you don't feel like doing it, do it. I get what they're saying as far as discipline is concerned. I don't get what you're saying. If you don't know why you're doing it and you continue to do it, you're not doing it.
Right. It's not discipline.
Right. And I would argue that the Bible says without faith, it is impossible to please God. If you don't have faith in what you're doing and you continue to do it, you're not pleasing God. You're pleasing the people around you by making them feel comfortable.
Right.
And so that's the situation where I would say leave. It's good for you.
Agreed. And I'm in this place right now where the call to do that is the thing. However, not even however, just like we're in the like we've been doing this. We've lived here 6 months, but I've only been out of off church staff for like 4. And we had our first event where like 40 people, 50 people from the neighborhood came over and had a hot dog. Like it was awesome. We grilled out in the front yard. Um, so we're in the beginning stages of this thing that we're trying to start, and we're not sure how to do it. We're kind of talking through right now what it would look like to invite people over for a weekly game night and dinner, and like
Mhm.
who those people would be. Um, but we're still going to a church because we recognize our need to. I told Sarah the other day, if we had a group of like 4 or 5 people, or 4 or 5 couples or families that we hung out with, and someone played the guitar, and or even they a cappella, they were like, hey, let's just sing, then I wouldn't need to go to a place to worship with other Christians because I'd be able to do that here.
Right.
And we're just not there. Like, we're not in that place. So we recognize our need as a couple and then individually to go be with other Christians and worship and sing and praise and
Mhm.
celebrate together.
I
Um,
would just throw in there YouTube worship night.
YouTube worship, right?
Awesome. Just, hey, what's your favorite song?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We'll rock it out.
We just don't have people that are willing to come over and do that.
Got it.
Like,
But I'm saying when
we
you
could do
get
it
there, when you
together.
get there,
Oh,
when you walk
absolutely.
up to that, because
But I am also learning to play the cello.
we're we're in a situation right now where the guy who was playing the guitar for us is no longer with us, and so we're forcing our daughter to
Did
learn.
he die?
He's no longer. He went to go to
That's
Baptist.
not funny.
He went
That's
to go
not
to
a funny
Baptist.
joke.
He went to go to Texas Baptist
Oh, yeah.
Theological
Dallas Theological Seminary.
Dallas Theological Seminary.
Um,
God bless him. He's a good guy.
yeah,
We love
he's
him.
still alive
Yeah, he's still with us
and thriving.
But he's not in our group anymore. So
Right.
now we're forcing our 13-year-old daughter to learn how to play guitar.
That's a good idea.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, but we do YouTube worship.
But not like, it's a good idea to force your children to learn to play music for your benefit,
Right. Why
not for their
I
benefit.
can't imagine why else we would.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. When I learned to play cello, it's on. Like, we stopped going to church the day that I can play a cello.
That's it.
That's our measuring stick. So I don't care if we have
Oh.
people to meet with.
Oh man.
We will sit
It's
here
so
and
great.
we will cello and
Right.
sing "Awesome God."
So when I say leave, I don't mean abandon.
Right, and that's the
I'm
thing.
I'm just saying that this format.
We're still going, and I'm still serving. Like I recognize a need, and I'm like,
Right.
hey, where do you need a need filled? I'm not going to give you my money.
This obligatory ritual format of church on Sunday that involves
It's
30
okay to
minute-
leave that.
30 minutes of worship and a 40-minute talk by one guy.
37.5 minutes.
And he better be a guy.
Yeah.
And then a 20-minute. Is it time to leave or not leave? Is this rude? And then hanging out in the foyer until your kids go crazy and you have to leave.
And actually, like, that's your excuse. Like, we have to go.
I have to.
I
These
have to
kids
go.
are getting
Like,
doing
people don't go to lunch anymore. Even
doing that every Sunday for the last 10 years. Not that there's anything wrong with doing it. If God speaks to you, the Holy Spirit's is purposing your heart toward the vision and goal of that church,
and you have
or
deep
whatever.
relationships,
And you have deep, meaningful relationships with people there, and like you're being challenged in your most holy faith.
and you're with each other throughout.
Why
the
would I
week.
tell you to leave that?
Right.
That's what I want for everyone.
Right.
Who I'm speaking to are the people specifically who are like, I don't have that. I don't have meaningful relationships with these people. I don't know why we keep doing it this way. I don't understand. I don't connect this to what the Holy Spirit wants from me. Those are the people I'm talking to. They've got to go. And you've got to let them go.
And the staff members who are like, I don't actually know why I'm employed here, except that I can't get a job anywhere else.
Yeah.
Maybe you go.
Yeah. If you started out leading worship when you were 19 and you were really good at it, and then they made you the worship leader when you were 20, and you've been doing it for the last 10 years, and now all you can think on Sunday is, I can't wait till I get home because I really want to finish watching that show I started watching last night. You got to go. You got to do something. You got to do something that engages you with the thing with God, with the thing that you're doing this for. And Sunday is not always that for everybody. Now, it can be, but it's not always that for everybody. And the church has to let those people go. And the church needs to help create those avenues for people to grow outside of the confines of that 2 hours on Sunday.
Right.
And they do, the church tries to do small groups. They try to do all these little things that'll get them there. But I'm telling you, as somebody who loves people and pastors, and to an extent,
so
just, you got to go.
Kind of wrapping it up. Did your upbringing as a Christian prepare you benefit you in your walk now? Did it prepare you? Um,
So the good thing about it was that I got a ton of Bible.
okay.
So I got a lot of Bible. I know a lot about the Bible. Um,
I read the Bible when I was in trouble. Not
that,
because I
so
felt like
thank you
I
for
need
your Pavlovian
not
response.
not
to the
because I felt
Bible.
like I'm in trouble. I should read the Bible. I got in trouble and
And
was
forced to read the Bible.
issued
Yeah,
the Bible as punishment.
yeah.
Occasionally,
Probably not
my
a good
parents would
idea.
say that's not how it went down.
Probably not a good idea.
Numbers is punishing.
A lot of it's punishing.
Yeah.
I there was benefit.
Okay.
But the real benefit was the people who pushed me further, who wanted people who saw value in me, even though they cultivated those things in me.
So did your
The church
upbringing
itself,
as a child? Because you said I stayed until I didn't stay anymore. Like,
yeah. So
did your upbringing as a Christian contribute to you leaving, or was there this other thing that happened that you were like, no, given the way that I was brought up as a Christian, I'd have stayed because it was good,
there was a point where I was afraid to leave
right?
because I was afraid what does that say about the church if I leave?
And
Am I
were you ever concerned
am
about?
I attacking the church?
Were you ever concerned about losing
Friends and stuff?
No, not friends, but like God, like if
Oh,
I
very
leave,
much
I lose
so.
God.
Because it's just like when you. I don't want to get in trouble for saying this. It's just like when you stop tithing and you think you're going to go, like God's going to take all your money away, because literally God is a loan shark.
Right.
In this scenario that
Right.
I'm talking about,
I want my $2.
Give me back my money. When you stop tithing and you think you're afraid to stop tithing because you've been conditioned, not that it. Hey, tithe if you want to, man. God bless you. God will bless you. I believe that. Um, but when you stop tithing and you think, am I going to be punished now? Like, is this the end for my financial well-being,
Right.
my stability? And because the two are so connected, it's hard for you to imagine a world without it.
Right.
But then whenever you on the other side of that, so that's that situation. And I remember praying about it and spending time with my wife, and my wife in tears over the potential of losing, like, not being able to financially take care of ourselves because, well, we're going to be put under the curse now. Like, literally, that's like that. That's the thinking.
Did she say the curse?
Yeah, yeah. That's it. It's because the opposite of blessing is a curse.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So like,
It is.
like literally, like somebody told my kid a
I
couple
can't
weeks
wait
ago.
till we're done
my
recording
kid,
so I can talk to
my kid was at church. Was at church a couple weeks ago. My 13-year-old son, and they told him that he should honor his parents, mother and father, or the Lord will shorten your days on the earth.
because the opposite of
The
blessed will you will live long.
Of having long days on the earth. The opposite of that is that's the thinking. That's the way that the church manipulates.
Linguistically, that's true.
The scripture.
Yeah.
Well, the opposite is true, but that's not
But
what it says.
but I mean, like to say it that way is
so
true, but it doesn't make it true.
Me and my son, who's exceptionally bright and inquisitive is the right word to use in this situation. We had a long talk about it, and just because one thing is true doesn't mean the opposite is false, or doesn't that. We had a long talk.
Is that a good parenting technique, though?
Yeah,
like,
it is.
Hey, dude,
clever.
You didn't listen. That's 2 days you probably lost.
You just compare it to cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like every cigarette, every time you disobey your parents, is like 7 seconds off your life.
Yeah.
Anyway, like it's the same idea.
Yeah.
It's the same mentality. And now on the other side, I will say this: on the other side of not tithing, I give so much money to the causes and purposes that God puts in my heart. And I don't even think about it. I don't think, oh, I'm going to go broke if I do this, or oh, that's a lot of money.
Right.
Why did I just give it to those people? I should probably check. And even my wife, even to more of an extent than I do, my wife gives to people, to causes, to things, and she doesn't feel the need to like call me and tell me, which I kind of think maybe she should, but she doesn't, because maybe just once or twice, but I'll usually find out a month later, oh yeah, we paid that person's rent. and I didn't know that until I'm capable of doing that, and it doesn't. I don't think about it. I don't worry about it. I can just give to the purposes God puts in my heart. And sometimes that's a church, and sometimes that's a church event or something a church is trying to do. But I never. The other side of it is freedom. The other side of it is seeing the purpose for my finances and the and how they impact the kingdom. Whereas when I was tithing, I just tithed because I was afraid not to, or
Right, but
it was not even an obligation. It was just a thing.
so
It's
tie
just this
that
thing
back
I did.
into being afraid to leave.
And same thing, like being afraid to leave is like, well, what if God's not outside of that building? I mean, I would say we should already know that the answer to that, but
Yeah.
what if he's not? What if he's not outside of that gathering of believers right there? And
Because we're two or three are
if I
gathered.
if I follow him out into the wild, like, what if he doesn't save me? And I think that's a real thing. And I'm not saying get over your fear. I'm saying understand that it exists and walk past it anyway. Because I know I'm called to the unchurched and dechurched, the people out there, right? So I'm already my mindset is already I've got to get out there to reach them. I've got to be where they are. That may not be you. You might have a specific purpose in the church, a prophet, a pastor, an evangelist, a missionary, a Sunday school teacher, a children's nursery worker, a parking lot
Right.
attendant,
Yeah.
whatever. You might have this thing that you have to do because it's what God created you to do. But if you keep going because you and don't know why you're there, you're going to hate being there
Right.
eventually one day. And I look around, like I said earlier, the landscape of faith that I grew up in, all the people I went to church with when I was a teenager, and the ones that are still in the church are barely hanging on. Not all of them, but most
Right.
of them. And the majority of them are gone. They're not a part of the church, nor are they part of ministry. They don't. They do other things now, and they were more passionate than I was when I was a kid. But this long haul of doing stuff without having the purpose and the reason and understanding why and being able to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit and follow it, like without that you got nothing.
Right.
You got this thing that you do that's religion, but not this thing that you are, which is becoming what God wants you to be. So
That makes sense. Cool. So you don't have to be. I mean, just know that it's okay to be afraid to leave.
yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I was afraid,
And the purpose
and you
is
should be
not.
afraid. It makes
The purpose
sense.
is not to never go back. The purpose is to find God in those
Yeah,
places.
you got to
Like
find God in that. I would look at the Bible and just say, man, these guys left all the time.
Right.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
they left, and then they found what God wanted, and sometimes they came back, and sometimes they died in deserts. I don't know.
Right. Sometimes you get boiled in oil and
Yeah,
whatever.
these things happen.
Yeah. So mine probably didn't help where I was at, but eventually it got me to like eventually it did provide this place of desperation
Yeah,
when I truly needed God, um, and um, and and he said I never left. I was able to not understand it, but I was able to embrace that and like, okay, he never left. So what does that mean? And it actually drew me into out of curiosity, like trying to figure out like, okay, if you never left, what does that mean? Like, because I don't feel you here. Um, so it didn't benefit it. Like my upbringing did not in Christianity did not benefit my ability to be with Jesus.
okay.
But it did push me toward trying to understand why I felt like he wasn't there. Because I knew God, like I knew of God and I knew of his existence and I knew who Jesus was said to be. And I like um so I knew enough at the time when I got to a point of desperation and I got to that point where I was like, so what does that mean? Like if you never left, where have you been? Um and that pushed me towards this like, all right, I'll listen. Like I'll go and I'll listen. Um and that so that time that I was in church from 32 to, 36 was probably um a beneficial time or was a beneficial time.
Mhm.
Like that was the beneficial time of my Christian upbringing because it's during those 4 years that I matured far more than the previous 20.
Got it.
You know, and that previous 20, or it was those 4 years where um, it drove like it drove me to this point where I was like, oh, I want deeper than what the program offers. So anyway, so that's where I'm at with leaving. Kind of, you know, the same thing. And Thomas and I have talked about a lot, but like I really do want to. Um, the thing that I got to experience with those people, I want that. I want that more. I want that more abundantly, and
Right.
I want to help other people experience that.
Right. I want to be more a part of what the Bible calls church now
Right.
than I ever have.
Right.
But when I open the Bible, like Francis Chan says, when I open the Bible and I look at it, and I
just
look
don't
at
see
the
it.
I look at the world the church has created, or not the world, the church world
Right.
the church has. Like where are
I
these
don't
two
see
things
it.
the same?
Right.
And there are some pockets, there are
Right.
areas, there are things that are like, oh, that's similar. I can
There are
see that.
themes,
But there's a
across
ton
the-
of stuff where I'm like, that's not why we're doing this.
right.
Like that has nothing to. Did you just turn on the fog machine? Not that you can't have a fog machine, but really,
Right.
why are you doing that?
Right.
Why?
Why did you spend whatever you spent on fog machines
Yeah.
when
and-
someone's house is being
Well,
foreclosed on?
yeah. It's not that I have a problem with the fog machine. I have a problem with all the other stuff
Right.
that the fog machine doesn't answer.
Right.
Or the laser show or whatever.
So
yeah,
that's
those
it.
my issues are.
So it's okay to leave, and we,
It's okay.
you know,
You'll be fine.
We're curious.
I mean, you may not be fine, but you'll be fine.
Yeah, we'd love to know what you think about that. And we're not talking about leaving Christianity. Don't leave Christianity. You invite people into Christianity.
But the best thing for your faith to grow will probably be to leave.
Right. Yeah. So that's the show. We'd love to hear what you have to
Putting
say.
in so much trouble. For this
We'd love to hear your story. How you grew up as a Christian or not as a Christian, and if you're a Christian now, why you're still a Christian.
How did you
say
How did
Christian?
you do it?
If you were not a Christian, you're a Christian now. Like, how did that happen? We'd love to hear stories. We're story people. I think we're all story people.
We're all story people.
So you can do that at the website, theoddshow.com. You can do it on Twitter at @odd_show. Go to the Facebook page and put a post on there. Both those were, you know, odd always has a G in it because G is silent, and that's the show. So stay on.
Stay on.
Thanks for checking out The Odd Show. You can follow Bruce on Twitter at bpags2 and Thomas at BlenderZen. Remember to rate and review us on iTunes and share us with your friends. Until next time, stay odd.